Good morning. So this is going to be part 2 of my conversation, my communication about the spiritual perspectives on body dysphoria. And so I thought it'd be a nice change to come out of doors. This is a beautiful, beautiful place. I consider it my office, and so you get to enjoy a little bit of the natural beauty while I'm talking. So I'm going to try very hard to stay focused and not meander too much. I actually have a few notes that I'm going to be looking at to try to remain as clear and precise as possible. And I'm going to work hard at making the message as accessible as possible and try to stay away from too much of the so very metaphysical talk. But I still want to be coming from a place of the soul's understanding of the journey through the body. So that being said, I'm working with some of the feedback that I've gotten and some of the questions that have been given me in relationship to the previous video, which has ended up being the part 1, and also in response to previous videos. So here is where I'm going to begin. One of the things that people have drawn attention to after they viewed the part 1 video is a very strong reaction has been brought forward when I mentioned fear in relationship to the body and how that manifests the symptoms of the body dysphoria. How is it that we experience ourselves in the body because we might be operating through the lens of fear? And this is not confined to transgendered individuals by any stretch of the imagination, but it is especially potent in beings who are transitioning from one expression of gender to another. The fear body is a vehicle that I feel as located in my physical body around my heart and my lungs. And it impacts the way that I breathe. So because the lungs govern, they regulate the emotional body, and they provide a feedback with the emotional body. And when we feel fear, we tighten those muscles and we constrict them. And we limit our capacity to breathe deeply and therefore to reach deep into where the life force is, or the prana, and function, and expand our beingness. We limit it and we constrict it and we make it very small. So that's one part of just being human and experiencing through fear, which leaves us with the fight or the flight. We want to run from a situation or avoid it or deny it, or we want to try to combat it and resist it and fight it and obliterate it. Neither of those extremes is really the healthy thing. Experiencing body dysphoria, where I carried enough fear of both having to experience myself in a vessel that wasn't mine, didn't feel like me, and discovering that I also had a fear of becoming my true self. So both of those fears were creating a friction and a resistance and creating this knot. And what that did to my physical vehicle over time, when I was young, 18, 19, 20, 21, these were the years in which I was considering transitioning and then came through to a place where I understood that that was not going to be my path in the immediate future, and it may not be my path at all in this lifetime. That was a spiritual journey, and it was a faith walk, and I took that and ran with it, and I embraced the feminine as much as I possibly could. But how that played out in my body and my relative satisfaction or dissatisfaction or ease or dis-ease in the body generated a tremendous amount of outer symptoms that were specifically related to either being in the feminine or the masculine, or resisting the feminine or resisting the masculine. And in my early 20s, what I discovered was that I was accumulating a huge amount of resistance to that message that I was going to be embracing the feminine. That resistance, born out of fear of walking that path. What would it mean to deny myself my own truth, to absorb a different kind of truth? What would that mean? Not being able to face the question itself or ask it fully, so therefore not being able to receive the answers, did a couple things to me at the very deep cellular level. It started to manifest in my body as increased estrogen. And so that accentuated even more my physical feminine qualities. And it also created in me a void, a hole, in which I needed to keep myself out of the core of the question of what is it to be a woman. And so I gained a tremendous amount of weight. My way of insulating myself became my way of insulating myself. I became very sedentary, and it was like my energy slowed down to such a degree that I was just building mass. And it really didn't matter what I ate or how much I ate. It didn't matter really in some ways how active I was or wasn't. Though, energy begets energy, and inertia begets inertia. And so the more that I slowed down my energy emotionally and psychologically, trying to put the brakes on the process of allowing myself to be a woman and really be a woman, the more I slowed down my body's energy. What that did after accumulating weight, and a dangerous amount of weight, I suffered from high blood pressure. I was in a pre-diabetic stage. I had some what turned out to be benign growths in and around my uterus. I had been experiencing an increase in migraine headaches and numbness in my extremities from not allowing the energy to stimulate those nerves and not being active enough to keep my whole system healthy. Now, I've studied Eastern medicine and martial arts and Ayurvedic medicine. And so I began to accumulate the tools and also reclaim some of the tools that would enable me to at least prevent the very worst of the symptoms that I was manifesting, and would allow me to begin to step back from this unhealthy position, orientation towards myself. It took many years of practicing those healing arts, it also took a willingness to move into a place where I was willing to do my emotional and psychological and spiritual work. And when I did that, then I was given the tools with which to confront the fear itself. And I had a very, very gifted teacher who had those tools provide me with the right kind of space, safety on the one side, but also challenge, kind of tough love, hard ass, sort of, I'm going to kick your butt if you don't start doing this work attitude. Both existed at the same time. And so I was given this place in which to really embrace the gift of the self-knowledge and run with it. And so I did, because I knew my life depended on it. My very life depended on it. If I wasn't going to commit suicide, then I was going to commit suicide in another way. I was going to kill myself slowly and painfully by resisting that which I was most afraid of embracing. And there were many other fears that were interrelated with that, but I want to stay focused on the gender issue. And the issue of purpose in the body, in and through the body. I was terrified of coming to the threshold of saying yes fully to the feminine path. It had gotten to the point when I began this emotional, spiritual, psychological practice where I had stopped my menstrual cycle. And there was disease breeding in my body. I knew it. I could feel it and sense it. And I actually had gotten to the point, once I started doing the clearing work, the sort of surrendering into and through the fear and allowing it to be there, and then allowing it to build to a moment where I really felt like the fear itself was going to destroy me. And then the release would come. And when the release would come, my body was purging itself, literally purging itself. I actually passed body parts, which is pretty dramatic. But, you know, I look at one point in time, not to be too gruesome, but, you know, I notice in the toilet that, you know, there's something that looks like body tissue. And so I'm not experiencing my menstrual cycle at the time, because those had stopped and I wasn't having any interim bleeding. There was nothing. And this was not like a spotting, shedding sort of experience. This was a body tissue. So I removed it and took it to, you know, my OB/GYN, and she looks at it and she's like, that's definitely body tissue. And you are somehow shedding this. How are you feeling? There was no bleeding, there was no hemorrhaging, there was no pain. And I was healthy, but there was something that needed to be cleared and cleansed out of my body. And it was beginning through the release of the emotional knots that I had built that were generating disease. And I don't know precisely what happened after that. In my body, were those parts not needed, or were they regenerated, or, you know, how far down that rabbit hole can I go? All I know is that some years later, I was able to become pregnant and give birth to my daughter. So, what do we do with that? What we do with it is I bring it forward at this moment and offer it as an extreme example of what it is that our minds and our emotional vehicles do to our bodies, and how by remaining trapped in the context of the dysphoria itself, my own resistance to the truth, the current reality of my body, what was then the current reality of my body, was killing me. And there are ways in which to stop that pattern and to embrace a healing mode an orientation of health and well-being and love of self that really has to transcend the fear or the resistance or the anger about how it is that we find ourselves in our bodies when they don't match our inner selves, the self that really needs to come forward and express. I believe that this is a fundamental step in the health and well-being of someone who is transgendered. I believe, due to the experience of my own path, that if we do not attend to the inner first, then the path that we walk, manipulating the body, changing the body, trying to get it to conform to our own self-image, that we're doing it backwards, we're inverting it, and we're actually in danger of creating more disease in our bodies and limiting our potential to fully express through the bodies, even as we change them, even as we transform them. What do I mean by all of this? What I mean by all of this is, if we don't attend, I'm going to use my own example. If I did not attend to the confrontation of my fears of being in a feminine body and all that means to me, to experience resistance and fear, having arrived at the threshold of making the decision to transition, if I still carried that fear and resistance now, and I hadn't cleared it ahead of time, once I started changing the body, those fears might seem to go away. And the resistance might seem to dissolve because I'm manipulating the matter of the substance of my body. And it starts to become, when I look at it and when I'm living through it, to be more true, to be more real. That seems like a really great medicine for what was ailing me. And to a certain degree, it is. The physical part of the transformation, the work, the hard work, the time and energy and the physical labor of transforming and transitioning is absolutely necessary and absolutely valuable in the process of becoming one's true self. However, the resistance to the feminine, to the polarized energy of the masculine, without accepting the complement of the masculine, I would be limiting my body's capacity to fully manifest that masculine energy. That means that I would not be able to generate the kind of physical openness. My cells would be holding an energy of tension and contraction and resistance. And that would be pushing against the agent of the testosterone and would be stopping me, or at least retarding, the ability of my body to absorb that substance and utilize it to its fullest potential. So my outer changes would be slower, less extreme, less full, therefore, and what would have been the truth of my body had I been born into a male body and had grown and matured into that body at the appropriate ages, the fullness of the masculine form, the fullness of the self settling into the body in order to express itself fully would be limited. Now, a lot of people would listen to this and think this is total hooey. And that's fine. You don't have to accept or believe what it is that I'm presenting, but I believe it. And I experience it in my own body. Two things have been going in tandem here. I chose to step into the physical part of the transition slowly, mainly due to the relationship with my daughter, because I want her to feel safe and I want her to feel like she's ready to walk with me at each stage of the transformation. That is our agreement between us, that I will honor her in that way. And what has happened in that journey is that she has come to honor me fully in my becoming, because we have this very gentle promise to each other that we will only move at the pace that we are both comfortable with. I can do that, and it's a part of my surrender process. It's a part of my healing process in order to take that path. And that's not for everybody. And I respect and honor that. So that is not presented as, you should do this. I don't believe that anyone should be doing that unless they feel called to it. It's hard when you have children, but you have to find the right rhythm and pace for your emergence into your true self. The emotional work, though, the psychological work, the spiritual work, I don't believe we can really shortcut that. I don't think we should. And rather than the intensive psychological counseling that many people receive when they're considering transitioning, seems to me, not to diss the psychological field, but it seems to me to be of limited use and help, unless someone knows that they have a need for that context and that language, in which case go for it. Find a good counselor or therapist and run with it. But we are spiritual beings, and there's more to our body of self than just the mind and the body. And so I'm presenting this as an opportunity to embrace another tool, another set of tools in both healing the wounds that we suffer, that we take on simply by virtue of being born the way that we are, and choosing to walk a path that allows us to become more of what we are. So those tools the work with the fear body is very much one in which we have to allow ourselves to feel the fear itself and feel the other emotions that arise. For many of us, no matter which direction we're transitioning in, there is a tremendous amount of anger that arises, a rage that has built in our bodies and in our minds because we're living a lie. Many of us feel that we're asked to live a lie, to live in illusion, and not really feeling allowed to express ourselves in our truth. So the anger is one of the most primal, powerful emotions that arises when we do this work. And the most important truth about that anger is that it is always covering a fear. Always. Fear is the primordial emotion, next to love. And if we're not existing in love, which is not the emotion love, it's the current of our I am, of our pure being, is that which we are created out of is love. If we're not in that state, then we're in fear. And so when the anger arises, what I advise people to do is step back into the fear. Always keep asking, what is the fear? Where is the fear? What is the fear? Let me feel the fear. And when we allow ourselves to really sponge it up, soak it up, let it permeate our bodies, then we start to drop the resistance to feeling the fear. So we practice this, we rehearse this a lot, because it isn't easy to remain in the fear. It's the last place we want to be. It's the last thing we want to experience. Those are the last things we want to look at in ourselves. So we stop it. We resist it. We run. We fight. We do everything we can to out-trick our minds into allowing ourselves to be in that place where the fear is. So then the work is to trick our minds into saying yes to feeling the fear and existing in it and surrendering to it. So that's a word you're going to hear me use a lot when I talk about the work itself, the spiritual meditation itself, the emotional meditation, is surrender. And surrender, this is a powerful word. And we tend to think of it as a giving up, as in, oh, I give up, it's because of a futility. No, that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by surrender is allowing, an allowance, an opening to the fullness of an experience that we otherwise would stay away from. In relation to body dysphoria, that means also working with the physical body in tandem with the emotion of fear. So wherever we've housed fear in our bodies, if we are in transition from the feminine to the masculine, we have to surrender into the part of our body at any given moment where the fear has kept us trapped in anxiety, in resistance, in anger, in unhealthy and dysfunctional ways of relating to our body and to others. So it might be you have breasts. It might be I don't have a penis. It might be I am fat and my body's too feminine, too curvy. It might be I'm too scrawny and not muscular enough, I'm not manly enough. It might be my features are too feminine and my voice is too high. And it could be all of these things. And they go from this very abstract place where it's, a hip, a breast, my jawline, my skinny arms, but then as I move into the fear, it becomes broken down to the very cellular level of my body. So I go in like a microscope, I zoom in, and the fears become more intense and bigger and spread out, and I start to feel like I'm drowning in them. And then I move my mind into my body, into that minute microscopic place, and I begin to feel, so I'm thinking about my voice. So I hear my voice, and I'm like, I know it's changing. I know it's going to be doing this for a long time to come, but I'm not comfortable with it because I'm not hearing my own true voice. So I hear that, and I feel the resonance of it in my ear, and I feel the vibration of it in my throat. And I begin to allow the fear to get bigger and bigger. What is the fear? Well, there's fear that I won't be heard. That's the core fear that's underneath that. That without my true voice, I won't be heard. So I allow that fear to grow and grow and grow and get bigger and bigger and threaten to consume me like a great wave or a great fire. And then I move my attention here into my throat chakra. And as I do that, I feel the vibration, both as it is and as it is not. I feel both the tension of what's happening in my vocal cords, and I feel the absence of the Adam's apple. So I also feel like a negative energy, a pocket of negative energy where what should be there is not. And then I go even further into that deep cellular level, where I'm carrying body memories of how my voice has developed over the years. You know, I used to sing in church choir, and I was a soprano. And I had an ease with my voice, even though it didn't feel natural to me over time. As I got older and matured through puberty and beyond into my adult years, that didn't feel natural to me. But at that point in time, just on the edge of, like, the outer edge of adolescence, I was singing. And because it was a vehicle of my faith and my expression of my soul, I could relax into it enough to actually be a very gifted singer, of which I'm very proud, but I'm also very humble before the fact that I was given that gift for those years to be able to express myself through my voice. And maybe not be heard by others, but certainly be heard by the divine, which is what it was for. That's what the voice is for, to me. Its purpose is to serve the divine in all of its manifestations. And so now I struggle with my singing voice. And it's very frustrating, as many of you know. Again, no matter which direction you're transitioning in, our voices change. And if we are musical at all, or we're public speakers, or we rely on our voice for levels of communication that are beyond the interpersonal, we struggle with this tremendously. There is a frustration that, again, has to come to a place of surrender, that I'm not going to be heard with my true voice for a long time to come. And underneath that is a layer of my voice is invaluable. I'm not worthy to be heard. And so I go deeper and deeper and deeper into that body construction of the fear. And as I release those fears by immersing myself into them and really kind of imploding with it, I actually feel the release as a physical implosion in my body, and that then spreads outward. And as I do that, what I notice is that eventually, over time, in the past few months as I've worked with this, my voice itself is actually relaxing and changing, because I'm losing the tension here, because I'm losing the tension in my whole being. So this is my perspective about healing the body from the inside out for all of us, all human beings, in relationship to those of us who are walking the path of the transgender journey. I believe that these tools are invaluable in allowing us to lessen the intensity of what we experience of the dysphoria. It also will allow us to embrace the changes of our bodies while in transition and after. And I imagine that if someone had these tools before they ever began hormone therapy or had any surgeries, that they would be priming themselves then to maximize the potential of everything that they would ever be doing to the outer body through manipulation of science and medicine. That's what I believe with my whole being. And I have been trying to embrace that perspective as much as possible in my own transformation, and with some success and with some challenge. I don't use the word failure, but what I do use is the word limitation. I know that I have set myself up with certain limitations, and so I confront those and I'm facing those, but these are the tools that I'm applying to the resistance, or to the fear that I'm continuously trying to avoid. And so I'm offering these now as the part 2, and I'm going to close this now. It's getting a little bit on the long side, and there will be a part 3 in which I will begin to bring in the higher metaphysical theories and ideas that I have about this, as well as talking about this in relationship to the actual science and technology of the transformation. You know, what is it that I'm experiencing in tandem with my medical doctor, as we observe the changes that are and are not happening. And then what is the practice in my meditations to help facilitate real growth and healing. So that's where I'm going to be going with this next. And again, I hope that this is valuable for you. Please do like and share as widely as you feel inspired to. And please do leave comments. Respectful comments are preferred, and respectful dialogue is encouraged. And again, I want to be able to build community, so, you know, please do feel free to make a connection via private message or subscribe to my channel, and I will do the same for you. Please don't spam. And you can also find me on Facebook. And my full name is the letter E Ardena Parsons. Thank you, and again, have a beautiful and blessed day, and namaste.